Welcome back, dear travelers. Do come closer, make yourself comfortable, and find a tranquil spot by the fountain, and let the soothing whispers of the water ease your mind. The night is calm, the stars watch over us, and more tales await to be shared with kindred spirits such as yourselves. Tonight, our journey takes us from the very creation of the cosmos to one of Azeroth's oldest and greatest civilizations, the Kaldorei, the children of the stars. These are the tales of luminous beginnings, boundless magic, and the tragic consequences of unbridled ambition. Let us now open the pages of a new chapter, one that begins at the shimmering shores of the Well of Eternity. Let's see. I'm sure it's here somewhere. It tends to sparkle a little more than the others. Here we are. A book as old as the stars themselves. The Kaldorei and the Well of Eternity. 10,000 years before the orcs and humans clashed in their first war, the world of Azeroth cradled only one massive continent surrounded by the infinite raging seas. That landmass, known as Kalimdor, was home to a number of disparate races and creatures, all vying for survival amongst the savage elements of the waking world. At the dark continent's center was a mysterious lake of incandescent energies. The lake, which would later be called the Well of Eternity, was the true heart of the world's magic and natural power. Drawing its energies from the infinite great dark beyond the world, the well acted as a mystical fount, sending its potent energies out across the world to nourish life in all its wondrous forms. In time, a primitive tribe of nocturnal humanoids cautiously made their way to the edges of the mesmerizing, enchanted lake. The feral, nomadic humanoids, drawn by the well's strange energies, built crude homes upon its tranquil shores. Over time, the well's cosmic power affected the strange tribe, making them strong, wise, and virtually immortal. The tribe adopted the name Kaldorei, which meant children of the stars in their native tongue. To celebrate their budding society, they constructed great structures and temples around the lake's periphery. The Kaldorei, or Night Elves as they would later be known, worshipped the moon goddess Elune and believed that she slept within the well's shimmering depths during the daylight hours. The early Night Elf priests and seers studied the well with an insatiable curiosity, driven to plumb its untold secrets and power. As their society grew, the Night Elves explored the breadth of Kalimdor and encountered its myriad denizens. The only creatures that gave them pause were the ancient and powerful dragons. Though the great serpentine beasts were often reclusive, they did much to safeguard the known lands from potential threats. The Night Elves believed that the dragons held themselves to be the protectors of the world, and that they and their secrets were best left alone. In time, the Night Elves' curiosity led them to meet and befriend a number of powerful entities, not the least of which was Cenarius, a mighty demigod of the primordial forestlands. The great-hearted Cenarius grew fond of the inquisitive Night Elves and spent a great deal of time teaching them about the natural world. The tranquil Kaldorei developed a strong empathy for the living forests of Kalimdor and reveled in the harmonious balance of nature. Yet, as the seemingly endless ages passed, the Night Elves' civilization expanded both territorially and culturally. Their temples, roads, and dwelling places stretched across the breadth of the Dark Continent. Azshara, the Night Elves' beautiful and gifted queen, built an immense, wondrous palace on the well's shore that housed her favored servitors within its bejeweled halls. Her servitors, whom she called the Kaldorei, or Highborn, doted on her every command and believed themselves to be greater than the rest of their lower caste brethren. Though Queen Hyjal was loved equally by all of her people, the Highborn was secretly hated by the jealous masses. Sharing the priest's curiosity towards the Well of Eternity, Hyjal ordered the educated Highborn to plumb its secrets and reveal its true purpose in the world. The Highborn buried themselves in their work and studied the well ceaselessly. In time, they developed the ability to manipulate and control the well's cosmic energies. As their reckless experiments progressed, the Highborn found that they could use their newfound powers to either create or destroy at their leisure. The hapless Highborn had stumbled upon primitive magic and were now resolved to devote themselves to its mastery. Although they agreed that magic was inherently dangerous if handled irresponsibly, Hyjal and her Highborn began to practice their spellcraft with reckless abandon. Cenarius and many of the wizened Night Elf scholars warned that only calamity would result from toying with the clearly volatile arts of magic. But Hyjal and her followers stubbornly continued to expand their burgeoning powers. As their powers grew, a distinct change came over Hyjal and the Highborn. The haughty, aloof upper class became increasingly callous and cruel towards their fellow Night Elves. A dark, brooding pall veiled Hyjal's once entrancing beauty. She began to withdraw from her loving subjects and refused to interact with any but her trusted Highborn priests. A young, brazen scholar named Furion Stormrage, who had spent much of his time studying the well's effects, began to suspect that a terrible power was corrupting the Highborn and his beloved queen. Though he could not conceive the evil that was to come, he knew that the Night Elves' lives would soon be changed forever. And so, the children of the stars prospered beneath the moon's watchful eye, shaping a civilization of beauty and wonder. How fragile, then, is such prosperity when its very foundation rests upon a power so immense? Power, as we've seen before, is never without cost, and even then, the well's quiet ripples carried whispers to distant realms, echoes that would not go unanswered. Perhaps the gifted magics were never truly their own, but borrowed from forces beyond their understanding, forces that would soon demand a terrible price. I see we've gained a few more curious souls by the fountain. This next tale, dear friends, is not one of peace and tranquility, but of conflict, a great and terrible battle that shook the very bones of the world. Let us turn the page now as we step into the story of a war that would forever change the face of Azeroth. The Highborn's reckless use of magic sent ripples of energy spiraling out from the Well of Eternity and into the great dark beyond. The streaming ripples of energy were felt by terrible alien minds. Sargeras, the great enemy of all life, the destroyer of worlds, felt the potent ripples and was drawn to their distant point of origin. Spying the primordial world of Azeroth and sensing the limitless energies of the Well of Eternity, Sargeras was consumed by an insatiable hunger. The great dark god of the nameless void resolved to destroy the fledgling world and claim its energies as his own. Sargeras gathered his vast burning legion and made his way towards the unsuspecting world of Azeroth. The legion was comprised of 1,000,000 screaming demons, all ripped from the far corners of the universe, and the demons hungered for conquest. Sargeras' lieutenants, Archimond the Defiler and Manaroth the Destructor, prepared their infernal minions to strike. Queen Hyjal, overwhelmed by the terrible ecstasy of her magic, fell victim to Sargeras' undeniable power and agreed to grant him entrance to her world. Even her highborn servitors gave themselves over to magic's inevitable corruption and began to worship Sargeras as their god. To show their allegiance to the Legion, the Highborn aided their queen in opening a vast, swirling portal within the depths of the Well of Eternity. Once all his preparations had been made, Sargeras began his catastrophic invasion of Azeroth. The warrior demons of the Burning Legion stormed into the world through the Well of Eternity and laid siege to the Night Elves' sleeping cities. Led by Archimonde and Manaroth, the Legion swarmed over the lands of Kalimdor, leaving only ash and sorrow in its wake. The demon warlocks called down searing infernals that crashed like hellish meteors into the graceful spires of Kalimdor's temples. A band of burning, bloodletting killers known as the Doom Guard marched across Kalimdor's fields, slaughtering everyone in their path. Packs of wild, demonic fellhounds ravaged the countryside unopposed. Though the brave Kaldorei warriors rushed to defend their ancient homeland, they were forced to give ground, inch by inch, before the fury of the Legion's onslaught. It fell to Malfurion Stormrage to find help for his beleaguered people. Stormrage, whose own brother, Illidan, practiced the Highborn's magics, was incensed by the growing corruption amongst the upper class. Convincing Illidan to forsake his dangerous obsession, Malfurion set out to find Cenarius and muster a resistance force. The beautiful young priestess, Tyrande, agreed to accompany the brothers in the name of Elune. Though Malfurion and Illidan shared a love for the idealistic priestess, Tyrande's heart belonged to Malfurion alone. Illidan resented his brother's budding romance with Tyrande, but knew that his heartache was nothing compared to the pain of his magical addiction. Illidan, who had grown dependent on magic's empowering energies, struggled to keep control of his nearly overwhelming hunger to tap the well's energies once again. However, with Tyrande's patient support, he was able to restrain himself and help his brother find the reclusive demigod, Cenarius. Cenarius, who dwelt within the sacred moonglades of the distant Mount Hyjal, agreed to help the Night Elves by finding the ancient dragons and enlisting their aid. The dragons, led by the great red leviathan Alexstrasza, agreed to send their mighty flights to engage the demons and their infernal masters. Cenarius, calling on the spirits of the enchanted forests, rallied an army of ancient treemen and led them against the Legion in a daring ground assault. As the Night Elves' allies converged upon Azshara's temple and the Well of Eternity, all-out warfare erupted. Despite the strength of their newfound allies, Malfurion and his colleagues realized that the Legion could not be defeated by martial strength alone. As the titanic battle raged around Azshara's capital city, the delusional queen waited in anticipation for Sargeras' arrival. The Lord of the Legion was preparing to pass through the Well of Eternity and enter the ravaged world. As his impossibly huge shadow drew ever closer to the well's raging surface, Azshara gathered the most powerful of her highborn followers. Only by linking their magics together in one focused spell would they be able to create a gateway large enough for Sargeras to enter. As the battle raged across the burning fields of Kalimdor, a terrible turn of events unfolded. The details of the event have been lost to time, but it is known that Neltharion, the dragon aspect of the earth, went mad during a critical engagement against the Burning Legion. He began to split apart as flame and rage erupted from his dark hide. Renaming himself Deathwing, the burning dragon turned on his brethren and drove the 5 dragonflights from the field of battle. Deathwing's sudden betrayal was so destructive that the 5 dragonflights never truly recovered. Wounded and shocked, Alexstrasza and the other noble dragons were forced to abandon their mortal allies. Malfurion and his companions, now hopelessly outnumbered, barely survived the ensuing onslaught. Malfurion, convinced that the Well of Eternity was the demon's umbilical link to the physical world, insisted that it should be destroyed. His companions, knowing that the well was the source of their immortality and powers, were horrified by the rash notion. Yet Tyrande saw the wisdom of Malfurion's theory, so she convinced Cenarius and their comrades to storm Azshara's temple and find a way to shut the well down for good. The War of the Ancients brought devastation to Kalimdor, as fire rained from the heavens and the earth trembled beneath the relentless fury of the burning legion. The war shook the planet to its core, a conflict that tested the courage of mortals, the resolve of dragons, and even the will of gods. But can any victory, however hard-won, truly restore what has been lost? The scars of such a battle run deeper than the earth itself, leaving wounds that no sacrifice could mend. Indeed, dear listeners, even with all they endured, and despite all their efforts, the balance of the continent hung by a fragile thread, for the true cost of war had yet to be paid. Alas, it is time to speak of the great breaking, the tale of the sundering of the world. Knowing that the well's destruction would prevent him from ever wielding magic again, Illidan selfishly abandoned the group and set out to warn the Highborn of Malfurion's plan. Due to the insanity brought on by his addiction and the stinging resentment towards his brother's affair with Tyrande, Illidan felt no remorse at betraying Malfurion and siding with Azshara and her ilk. Above all else, Illidan vowed to protect the well's power by any means necessary. Heartbroken by his brother's departure, Malfurion led his companions into the heart of Azshara's temple. Yet as they stormed into the main audience chamber, they found the Highborn in the midst of their final dark incantation. The communal spell created an unstable vortex of power within the well's turbulent depths. As Sargeras's ominous shadow drew ever closer to the surface, Malfurion and his allies rushed to attack. Azshara, having received Illidan's warning, was more than prepared for them. Nearly all of Malfurion's followers fell before the Mad Queen's powers. Tyrande, attempting to attack Azshara from behind, was caught off guard by the Queen's highborn guardsmen. Though she vanquished the guardsmen, Tyrande suffered grievous wounds at their hands. When Malfurion saw his love fall, he went into a murderous rage and resolved to end Azshara's life. As the battle raged inside and outside of the temple, Illidan appeared from the shadows near the shores of the Great Well. Producing a set of specially crafted vials, Illidan knelt and filled each with the well's shimmering waters. Convinced that the demons would crush the Night Elves' civilization, he planned to steal the sacred waters and keep their energies for himself. The ensuing battle between Malfurion and Azshara threw the Highborn's carefully crafted spellwork into chaos. The unstable vortex within the well's depths exploded and ignited a catastrophic chain of events that would sunder the world forever. The massive explosion rocked the temple to its foundations and sent massive quakes ripping through the tortured earth. As the horrific battle between the Legion and the Night Elves' allies raged around and above the ruined capital city, the surging Well of Eternity buckled in upon itself and collapsed. The resultant catastrophic explosion shattered the earth and blotted out the skies. As the aftershocks from the well's implosion rattled the bones of the world, the seas rushed in to fill the gaping wound left in the earth. Nearly 80% of Kalimdor's landmass had been blasted apart, leaving only a handful of separate continents surrounding the new, raging sea. At the center of the new sea, where the Well of Eternity once stood, was a tumultuous storm of tidal fury and chaotic energies. This terrible scar, known as the Maelstrom, would never cease its furious spinning. It would remain a constant reminder of the terrible catastrophe and the utopian era that had been lost forever. Somehow, against all odds, Queen Azshara and her highborn elite managed to survive the ordeal. Tortured and twisted by the powers they had released, Azshara and her followers were dragged down beneath the raging sea by the well's implosion. Cursed, transformed, they took on new shapes and became the hateful serpentine Naga. Azshara herself expanded with hate and rage, becoming a massive monstrosity, reflecting the wickedness and malice that had always hidden within her core. There, at the bottom of the maelstrom, the Naga built for themselves a new city, Nazjatar, from which they would rebuild their power. It would take over 10,000 years before the Naga would reveal their existence to the surface world. The world itself shattered. Beneath their feet, beneath everything they had built, it all came crashing down. How does one even imagine such a thing? And yet, there were those who lived it, who endured it. As the continent was torn apart, the seas started rushing in to claim what remained, leaving at its center a massive maelstrom of chaos, forever marking the wound. What had once been whole now lay broken, its lands torn asunder by the folly of magic and the arrogance of its wielders. Azeroth had fallen into ruin, and yet life, fragile as it was, endured. From the ashes of their shattered civilization, the Night Elves would rise again, seeking solace in the shadows of the mountains. But there, amidst their refuge, they would soon learn that the past is not so easily buried. No, dear travelers, a new gift awaited them, one that would shape their fate once more. Let us now journey to Mount Hyjal and uncover the tale of Illidan's gift. The few Night Elves that survived the horrific explosion rallied together on crudely made rafts and slowly made their way to the only landmass in sight. Somehow, by the grace of Elune, Malfurion, Tyrande, and Cenarius had survived the great Sundering. The weary heroes agreed to lead their fellow survivors and establish a new home for their people. As they journeyed in silence, they surveyed the wreckage of their world and realized that their passions had wrought the destruction all around them. Though Sargeras and his legion had been ripped from the world by the well's destruction, Malfurion and his companions were left to ponder the terrible cost of victory. There were many highborn who did survive the cataclysm unscathed. They made their way to the shores of the new land, along with the other Night Elves. Though Malfurion mistrusted the highborn's motivations, he was satisfied that they could cause no real mischief without the well's energies. As the weary mass of Night Elves landed upon the shores of the new land, they found that the holy mountain, Hyjal, had survived the catastrophe. Seeking to establish a new home for themselves, Malfurion and the Night Elves climbed the slopes of Hyjal and reached its windswept summit. As they descended into the wooded bowl, nestled between the mountain's enormous peaks, they found a small, tranquil lake. To their horror, they found that the lake's waters had been fouled by magic. Illidan, having survived the Sundering as well, had reached Hyjal's summit long before Malfurion and the Night Elves. In his mad bid to maintain the flows of magic in the world, Illidan had poured his vials, which contained the precious waters from the Well of Eternity, into the mountain lake. The well's potent energies quickly ignited and coalesced into a new Well of Eternity. The exultant Illidan, believing that the new well was a gift to future generations, was shocked when Malfurion hunted him down. Malfurion explained to his brother that magic was innately chaotic and that its use would inevitably lead to widespread corruption and strife. Still, Illidan refused to relinquish his magical powers. Knowing full well where Illidan's ruthless schemes would eventually lead, Malfurion decided to deal with his power-crazed brother once and for all. With Cenarius' help, Malfurion sealed Illidan within a vast underground barrow prison, where he would remain chained and powerless until the end of time. To ensure his brother's containment, Malfurion empowered the young warden, Maiev Shadowsong, to be Illidan's personal jailer. Concerned that destroying the new well might bring about an even greater catastrophe, the Night Elves resolved to leave it be. However, Malfurion declared that they would never practice the arts of magic again. Under Cenarius's watchful eye, they began to study the ancient arts of druidism that would enable them to heal the ravaged earth and regrow their beloved forests at the base of Mount Hyjal. And so, dear travelers, we carefully close the final page of tonight's tales. From the well of eternity to the shattering of the world and the strange gift left in Illidan's wake, we've witnessed the rise, the fall, and the resilience of a people forever shaped by magic and ambition. It's curious, isn't it? How even amidst such devastation, the threads of hope and folly weave themselves so tightly together. But such is the nature of stories, and such is the nature of us all. Let us leave these books where they belong, their secrets resting quietly until we meet again. When next we gather, it will be in another inn, with new volumes in hand and fresh tales to share. So take care on your journey home. And remember, the fires of knowledge burn brightest when shared with good company. Good night and safe travels.